TCU is Sweet 16 bound. FrogballUSA got the series win over Texas Tech, plus men's tennis and women's tennis both get their big dubs on the day. It's a 4-0 sweep of the Saturday events, Sunday events for TCU athletics, whatever day it is. Who cares? She's Melissa Triebwasser. I'm Jamie Plunkett. We are Frogs Insider, presented by the Flying T Club, here live on Twitter and on YouTube, breaking down the wonderful day of TCU athletics. And Melissa, I know that you've got a little celebratory beverage there for the first time either TCU basketball program makes the Sweet 16. What are you having?
I went with the Kentucky special, and I rocked the Blantons tonight. I figured tonight was
nice.
a Blantons-worthy thing. Now, don't laugh at me. I am going to drink it over the rocks, but that's only because tomorrow's a work day. So, you got to soften it just a touch.
You don't drink it over the rocks. You drink it on the rocks. But either way, you pour your Blantons is good with me. I'm having a little JT Mellick rice whiskey from Louisiana myself, celebrating a TCU Sweet 16 berth for the first time in school history for either the men or the women. Melissa, we're going to start there. But first, we got to talk a little bit about our program sponsor. That is the Flying T Club. Very thankful for our partnership with them. Flying T Club is TCU's NIL collective. They support over 130 TCU student athletes, and they partner those athletes with nonprofit organizations in and around the city of Fort Worth to get them engaged and give back to the community of Fort Worth. It's a great organization. You can go to flyingtclub.com and see how you can get involved. Yes, things are changing in July, but the Flying T Club is still vibing. And go to flyingtclub.com, see how you can get involved, and see all of the great things they're doing with TCU student athletes and the city of Fort Worth on behalf of TCU. Very cool organization. We're thankful to have been partnered with them for this athletics year for TCU. Pretty dope. Also, we are members of the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Republic of Football Network, a podcast feed that includes a show for every D1 football program in the state of Texas. You can find that feed by searching Republic of Football Network wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll see us right there. Click subscribe, leave a rating and review. If that's too much for you, though, you can just search Frogs Insider, and our feed with just our show will be there. It will include a couple of shows that aren't on the Dave Campbell's feed as well. So if you want the full Frogs Insider experience, search up Frogs Insider. Exactly right. Search up Frogs Insider wherever you get your podcast, and go over to the Frogs Insider YouTube channel, where you can, in just a few minutes, watch all of the post-game press conferences from tonight's win over Louisville. Mark Campbell, TCU players, Louisville's head coach, about 30 minutes worth of press conferences right over there at the Frogs Insider YouTube channel. I don't believe you'll find that pretty much anywhere else. So
also
go
maybe
there and get it.
A couple locker room exclusives as well that will be going up at some point this evening too, that we'll talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But as Slingin' Sammy, the sequel, says, it is a great day to be a Horned Frog today. And Melissa, we're going to start with TCU women's basketball 85, Louisville 70 at the Schollmeyer. 7,450 of your closest friends getting loud and rowdy as Haley Van Lith, Sedona Prince, Agnes Eminopu, Donovan Hunter, Madison Connor, and the rest of the Horned Frogs under Mark Campbell's leadership have advanced to the first Sweet 16 in TCU program history. First thoughts, first takeaways. Get after it here.
Yeah, I mean, just right out of the gate, I just want to say what a moment. What a moment as a TCU alum, as someone who loves the game of women's basketball, and just to see 7,500 people crammed in, the student section to be full as the kids are coming back from spring break, that place to be loud to the point of almost being annoying in the best possible way. It was outstanding. I mean, there were definitely, like when I first walked out on the floor, I took it in. I just took a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I did a full 360 and just appreciated what a cool opportunity it was. But outside of just like the emotion of it, Jamie, we talked about this way back in the preseason. We said I was very bold in my claim that I thought this was a Sweet 16 or bust team, and with the pressure on them all season long, with the target on their back, really after that Notre Dame win, this team has delivered time and time again on the big stage in the big moments against the long odds and with just everything. Oftentimes it felt like was going to be stacked against them. They'd never stubbed their toe. I mean, you're looking at a team that's lost just 3 games all season, that was undefeated at home. To see the best players play their best in those moments, and then to also see like Donovan Hunter and Agnes Emanopu really step up. I mean, it was an unbelievable testament to what Mark Campbell has built, how bought in his team is, and how capable they are of keeping this thing rolling.
You talked about it, the best players playing their best. Haley Van Lith with her second points and assists double-double of the season, 16 points, 10 assists. A lot of those assists came in the first half as she was getting trapped at half court quite frequently and found Agnes Emanopu and Donovan Hunter, who combined for 7 first-half three-pointers to help TCU out. Because let's be honest, the first quarter did not go very well for TCU until the final couple of minutes. They fall behind Louisville early. They're really struggling to get going offensively. Let's talk for just a brief moment about Jada Curry, Louisville's guard, who went and dropped 41. She just handed 41 to TCU tonight like it was nothing. Went 6 of 12 from three-point range, hit all 9 of her free throws, and was lights out for the entire 40 minutes of the game. But she scored 15 points in the first quarter, gets Louisville out to a 17-13 lead with about 3 minutes to go in that quarter. And that was, when TCU woke up. Donovan Hunter hits a corner three with about a minute 59 left in the first quarter, and that sparks a 17-0 run for the Frogs that goes all the way down to the 4-minute and 10-second mark of the second quarter, where they're ahead 30-17. What did you see in that run that really let you know that TCU was going to take care of this game? Because that at that point, I think it was Stephen Hawkins of the AP leaned over to me and goes, "Yeah, this one's done."
Yeah, I can point to 2 specific moments, and then I'll talk about a strategy change that happened. Number one, Donovan reacted emotionally after making, I think, her second 3. And I was like, oh, if Dono's feeling it, like, this one is over. She let out a big scream. This is a kid who's as steady as they come. She's not an emotional player. She keeps it real even keel. And she reacted big time after that second 3. And after the third one, I mean, she was just like, she was living it up. But the moment I knew that TC was going to be fine was Haley hit an off-balance jumper, kind of off one foot, fading away. And as she walked down the court, you could just see she definitely said something. I'm not a lip reader, but basically was something along the lines of like, "Y'all are cooked now." Like those weren't the words, but that was the feeling, the emotion behind it. And once she hit that, you knew she was going to have it. And even though this wasn't a 30-point game for her. Her handling of the offense and that playmaker that we've talked about all year long that she needed to prove that she could be, they were trapping her, like you mentioned. They were trapping the pick and roll. They were throwing late doubles at her. They were throwing early doubles. They were giving her the sideline, letting her get around the first trap, I think on purpose, trying to bait her into the corner a couple of times. Louisville had a great defensive game plan, but because Agnes and Dono stepped up and because Haley made that adjustment of getting rid of that ball a lot quicker, I loved what they were doing in the backcourt against the trap, where they were just kind of playing hot potato back and forth with her and Donovan, and then they did the same thing where they were moving Sedona up to the top of the key as kind of a bailout as opposed to letting her work the block. They were swinging the ball way higher normally, really trying to spread the floor and create space. And once they made that adjustment of being able to get that ball moving through the air, Haley does a really good job of keeping her dribble alive, but she does get baited a little bit sometimes in those traps. And I thought that her adjustments that she made this evening happened so much quicker than we saw in like the Oklahoma State loss and the Kansas State loss. And she really seemed to understand what Louisville was going to do and anticipate those traps after that first quarter in a way that made it really effective. And if you're going to have your 2, least threatening offensive players go off the way that they did, it's going to be really hard to beat TCU.
Yeah, least threatening in quotations, definitely important there. And I like what you pointed out, that Sedona coming up to that free throw line elbow area was really significant, because later on in the game, especially in that fourth quarter, as Louisville started to make their comeback, as they started to kind of put some pressure back on TCU's guards, bringing Sedona out that far allowed Donovan and Agnes both to get a couple of really nice looks right at the rim that helped them keep Louisville at arm's length. Melissa, TCU went crazy in the first half of this game. They didn't miss consecutive shots. They had 2 times where they hit 6 consecutive shots in the midst of that big run. And they led at halftime by 21, 47-26. At that point in time, and because we knew like Louisville was going to throw another punch.
Sure.
But at that point in time, with a 21-point lead at halftime, did you think that there was an opportunity for TCU to give it all back, or did you really think at that point that this one was kind of in the books?
I had a couple of different reporters in the media workroom before the game ask me how I felt about this one. And I called it almost perfectly. I thought that they'd be ahead after the first. I thought they'd come out a little bit hotter. But, it took them about 6.5 minutes to really get going. But they controlled the game so well. They were shooting at such, like you mentioned, I mean, the back-to-back, not having back-to-back missed shots is an obscene thing to happen in a college basketball game in March Madness. That's crazy. But I felt really confident because I have so much confidence in Haley Van Lith as a finisher. And that's something I kind of questioned, I think, after the Oklahoma State and the Kansas State losses, is that I didn't see her play her best in the tight moments. And we have seen such growth in her in that regard since then. I felt that she would be able to keep everybody composed. I also knew that with the way that Agnes and Donovan played, you can't let up on Haley and Madison and Sedona, and then they had to play them a little bit more straight up until they kind of cut it within single digits a couple of times, because of how good Donovan and Agnes were playing offensively. But I knew Louisville would make that punch. I felt confident that they would find their way back into the game. I thought TCU would pull away a little bit earlier than they did again. But this team is, though they have only played now 2 games together in March Madness, they have, I think somebody did the math on this, but it's like 40-something games or 30-something games of March Madness experience individually. Multiple players in this team have played in a national championship game. Multiple players in this team have played in Final Fours and Elite Eights and Sweet 16s. Haley's never not been to at least the Sweet 16. I did not think the moment would be too big for them, and I was confident that Campbell and his staff and these players would be able to hold off that run and ultimately win kind of going away.
Let's talk about the defense for a second, because you don't go on a 17-0 run without stopping the other team from scoring. Louisville's head coach came in after the game and really just said it boiled down in that second quarter to making shots versus missing shots. And Louisville did have a couple good looks during that run that just rimmed out, didn't go out. But I thought TCU did a really nice job, especially in that 17-0 run, 17-0 run, of keeping Louisville to one and done. Louisville's got a couple big forwards. They've got a decent sized front court, and they did a great job tonight of keeping Sedona from dominating on the glass. Sedona finished with 4 rebounds. I think it's one of her lowest outputs of the season, and yet TCU and Louisville tied on the glass because of some of the work that the guards were doing for the Frogs. But when you're an elite basketball team, one of the things that you have to do, even if you're as good offensively as the Frogs are, is you have to be able to get stops on demand. And TCU struggled through that first quarter for the most part, found themselves down a couple buckets, and then they got going when the defense got going, because they had a couple steals that led to the Donovan 3, led to a swing pass to Agnes from the wing to hit another 3. Sedona had a couple of blocks in that first half. And I was very impressed with TCU's response defensively to the physicality that Louisville presented, because I think that, like you mentioned earlier in the season, if TCU had been kind of punched in the mouth like that from a physicality standpoint, they might have backed down a little bit. But tonight they responded in kind defensively, especially in that second quarter, and I think that is what helped separate for them tonight.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the things that's really been underlooked and underappreciated about this TCU team is how good they are defensively. It really is kind of their secret sauce. It's easy to look at a team that can hit threes the way that they do, that can score the way they do, that has a superstar like Haley Van Lith and Sedona Prince and Madison Connor and whoever else, and say, oh, this is an offensive team. But when they want to play defense at an elite level, they have shown time and time again they're capable of doing so. And you're exactly right. Like, that run, Louisville did have some shots just not go in, but they also got forced into much more difficult shots than we saw in the first quarter. They were not giving things up as easily. And one of the things I've noticed that they've done defensively, they pretty much play straight up 90% of the time. I mean, they are a man-to-man team most of the time. But what they've gotten really good at is funneling players baseline below the basket and letting Sedona kind of recover and putting her in a position to block shots. And I think that they did that really well. Sedona was laboring in that, like, kind of towards the end of the second and that third quarter. They really made her work hard today. And credit again to Louisville has really active really athletic post players. They can throw size, they can throw athleticism, they can throw shooting. They had some versatility in that regard. But credit to Sedona too. I mean, even though it looked like she was getting taken physically out of the game for periods, when they needed her to be huge, when Louisville made that run, they kept feeding Sedona time and time again, and she really made them pay. She got to the free throw line several times, where she converted at a really high clip. She got some good pick and rolls, and again, the thing that makes her so unique is her passing ability. And when you talk about those backdoor cuts and those kind of slip screens and different things, I mean, that doesn't work if she's not able to find those. And even though not all of those came from her ability to see the floor and make the right decision from that high post and that super high post position, I think is what enables a lot of those cuts to happen. So, I was impressed. Mark Campbell was on his team early in a way we have not seen this season. He was getting after them. I mean, he was yelling, not in anger, but in just sheer necessity because of how loud it was the entire time. But he called more timeouts at different points that we've seen him really do this season. He has really amped up his expectations as the stakes have gotten higher, as he should. And I think that the thing that's so great about this team is they continually respond. And they've shown that they respond to a lot of different styles of coaching and that they understand what they need to do, and they're really good at stepping up and taking care of that.
So Louisville goes on their run. Kind of what we were expecting. They win the third quarter by 3, but they land the first punch in the third quarter, and then they go on a big run in the fourth. And they actually cut this lead all the way down to 9 points at 73-64 with, I believe, about 3.5 minutes left in the game. And at that point, you're kind of thinking, gosh, this feels like what we've seen from women's basketball a couple times this year, where they get out to a big lead, and then because Campbell works with such a short bench, they're kind of running out of gas, running out of steam. But then TCU responds, even in the face of the physicality, in the face of the half-court traps, and in the face of some really interesting officiating all the way around tonight, where they were allowed to be very physical in the first half and then less so in the second.
Significantly less so.
Significantly less so. They respond by winning the final few minutes of the basketball game 12-6 and going on a 7-0 run over the final 2:39 of the game to really put it away. Beating the trap was really big in that moment. Beating or hitting free throws was really big in that moment. Obviously, Donovan had a 3 and a layup to kind of capitalize things there. But how good was it to see after they kind of let Louisville back into the game, or Curry kind of wills Louisville back into the game, more like it. How good was it to see TCU just say, no, this is not your moment, this is our moment, and kind of step on their necks in the final 3 minutes?
That was the exact phrase I was going to use when I was coaching. That's always been my kind of favorite thing is that we joke in football often about good teams win, great teams cover. But like this is the thing, right? Is that if you are going to be elite, you have to have that killer instinct. And they showed something. ESPN showed something from the locker room about I can't remember the exact phrasing, but basically of like being able to like choke someone's life away. They didn't say it like that. They said it in a much nicer way because this is like the nicest group of TCU players in history. But it is that ability to step on the neck, and when a team has all the momentum and you have someone like Curry, who I'm not the first person to make this joke, but looked more like Steph than Jada today.
I believe I made that joke
I think
to
it was
you.
I think you did, and I just stole it. I didn't try to claim it as my own, but I didn't give you credit. So, but yeah, like you said, like she was very much Steph Curry tonight. Like it would be really easy for a lot of teams under that immense pressure to kind of fold. And I was talking to one of the ESPN writers that was down, and she kept mentioning that like there's a lot of pressure. Louisville's a team with nothing to lose. When you have this fan base, you've never played in front of this many people at TCU before. You're looking to do something with a program that's never done before. You have a team that genuinely likes each other as much as they do. Like it would have been really easy for them to like feel the pressure in that moment, but like you said, they completely stepped on their necks. Like to see Donovan get that dagger 3, Haley had a great drive late with where she got fouled, and they like you said, not today, Satan, get behind me, Satan the Cardinal, and they wanted it more at the end, and they were able to have their desire meet their talent. And just completely snuff out Louisville with a big hearty thanks to the crowd who continuously gave them energy in those moments.
Yeah, it was, 7,494 was the official head count at Schollmeyer Arena today.
And that's a legit number. That was not that's how many tickets we sold.
No,
those seats were full.
you and I sat down right before the game started and kind of looked around the stadium and thought, gosh, couldn't see an empty seat.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see, just because TCU had been asking for a sellout all year, right? Like Haley had been pounding the table in post-game press conferences.
Literally.
Campbell had been asking fans to show out and show up. And TCU fans did all year long. The crowd grew and grew and grew, but they hadn't had a sellout yet. And so I think it's really fitting that in their final home game of the season, to get 30 games above 500 and make the first Sweet 16 in program history, that they finally also got their sellout. And that place was loud. I want to shout out specifically to the Frog Army and the TCU student section, because they were packed nut to butt an hour before the game even started. They piled into that stadium. When I pulled up at about 2 hours before tip-off, I could see the line from where I parked my car, and they were wrapped around the building already, hyped, ready to rock, and they were rowdy the entire game. I don't think they sat down, and that stuff makes such a huge difference, and it was really cool to see. We've seen sellouts for TCU men's basketball. We've seen the students show out for men's basketball, but it was really cool to see the entire TCU community show up for the women in the most important game in the program's history.
Yeah, it was awesome. It set a record for women's, the highest attended women's sporting event in TCU history. And again, Haley kind of said it the other day. She said, "I'm not going to beg," but that she didn't beg, but she definitely asked. But that they have a product worth watching. Mm-hmm. And it'd be one thing if they didn't play entertaining basketball, but this was the last chance to see those 7 seniors at Scholmeyer Arena. And
yeah,
when I tell you, I truly believe that Mark Campbell will be able to recruit at a high level, that he will, as he kind of joked with me after I left the locker room tonight, finding the next Haley Van Lith as she was walking by, and he kind of grabbed her. He's like, I gotta find the next Haley Van Lith, and she kind of rolled her eyes. You are watching transcendent talents this year. Mm-hmm. And I firmly believe that Haley Van Lith will have her number retired, and I think she should. She should absolutely have her jersey retired, despite the fact that she has been here for one season. I will die on that hill. You are going to see some great players come through here, but it's very rare to have a lightning bolt that Haley is, both on and off the court. And so I'm glad that people took an opportunity to watch her play in a TCU uniform one last time at Scholmeyer Arena. And the same can be said for Agnes Eminopu, who has just so quietly and consistently been outstanding, for Sedona Prince, who is an absolute unicorn in basketball, for Madison Connor, who may well be the best shooter. I mean, her and Desmond Bain, I'd love to see them in a three-point contest someday, because those are probably the two best pure shooters to ever come through TCU, and she's arguably the best shooter in college basketball, men's or women's, this year. For all of these grad transfers, Deasia Merrill and Nat Mazurek, and the ones that stuck around, Deja Turner, all of these women that took a chance on TCU or stayed when they knew that their role was going to change. Una Jovanovic is another one who was a starter last year and played a ton of minutes, and has seen her role change this year. It's absolutely worth supporting those young women and getting to watch them. Just, if you love basketball, I don't want to hear from any TCU fans that say they don't watch women's basketball, because if you watch that game tonight, it wouldn't matter if it was men's or women's. It was a hell of a basketball game. It was an awesome atmosphere. And it was historic, and I'm really glad the TCU basketball community showed up.
Agnes Eminopu finishes with the team-high 23 points on 8 of 12 shooting, including 4 three-pointers. She was absolutely massive. It's her second highest scoring output since she's been at TCU. She had 26 last season against Nebraska in a non-conference game back in November. She set the tone. Really, truly, offensively, she set the tone early with a couple of those big three-pointers. She caught one down in the left corner for a big three, was the first shot of the game for TCU, and then caught a swing pass from Madison Connor, who was the only starter that didn't finish with double figures points tonight, with 9, but she also had 6 rebounds and a pair of assists and only 1 turnover, which was huge for her. And I just Mark Kimball talked about it afterwards. He's like, I'm totally fine with teams wanting to double Haley Van Lith, because that leaves our shooters open, and that's a really tough decision to have to make against us, is to leave our shooters open. And Emma hit 4 threes. Dono hit 4 threes.
Dono didn't miss tonight.
Donovan did not miss tonight. 6 for 6 from the floor, 4 for 4 from three-point range, 2 for 2 at the free throw line, with 6 rebounds and 4 assists. And just a pair of turnovers. As much as she was handling the ball,
she's only a sophomore.
It was really great to see. And you're right. She showed some emotion early that I thought was really great. She hit that fourth three-pointer of the game with a minute left in the fourth quarter, and she turned and pointed and just biggest smile I've seen her have on her face. Haley was emotive tonight in a way that we hadn't seen. I mean, she's an emotional player, but even took it to another level. Let's see. Let's run down some more stats here, though. Sedona Prince, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Haley, 16 points, 10 assists. Second time she's had a points and assists double-double this year. Also 5 boards. She was really active on the glass. It's one of the things that I think TCU did incredibly well tonight was Sedona boxed out. She did what she needed to do. But the guards crashed, and that was what allowed TCU to get some of these rebounds and get some of these second chance points, second chance opportunities, really, as they crashed the glass hard. Especially defensively, I thought that was really important when you have a player on the other team like Curry who is just unconscious. When she misses, it's really important not to give her second chance opportunities, and she had a couple in the first quarter and hit a pair of threes off of them, which I thought was really big for Louisville in gaining some of their momentum early on. But outside of that, I mean, TCU did a great job of limiting Louisville to one and done on that side of the court. Donovan Hunter, 18 points. I mean, what can you say? 6 and 4, just insane. No points from the bench tonight, which is interesting. But you look
had
over.
A very short leash.
He did.
He had a very short, and I get it. I understand it. I think he used Taylor Bigby to kind of send a message to Madison Connor defensively really early, and then he did not make a sub the entire second half. And I think that the other thing that's great, like that third quarter, what were you said? I think you called it as like 17 fouls in the third quarter or something insane, right? But for much of this game, there was not a lot of stoppage in play.
No.
So there was for the fouls in the third, but the whistle, like the game did not stop very often in this one, especially in during that 17-0 run. I mean, there was maybe 2 whistles, and one of them was the quarter break, and then again in the fourth quarter. And he did not make a single substitution in the second half.
Yeah. So there were 30 fouls called in the game. 23 of those were called in the second half. 16 of those were called in the third quarter. It was a really interesting, really choppy third quarter of play. Louisville tried to do some of the same stuff they did in the first half that gave them success, but they weren't allowed to. Yeah. Olivia Cochran got called for a couple of fouls, Louisville center, that were not called, and she was playing the game the way she played it in the first half, and you could see some of the frustration on her face, some of the other Louisville players on their faces as well. I mean, they got called for 10 fouls in the third quarter, playing the same way they played in the first half.
Yeah.
And that has to be disruptive as a basketball player, to go into the locker room expecting one thing and then coming out and having the game be officiated completely differently. You could tell that was frustrating to Louisville, but at the same time, they won the third quarter. They won the fourth quarter as well. They outscored TCU by 6 in the second half of this basketball game, but TCU had just gotten out to such a huge lead with that second quarter. They won that second quarter 27-9. That it was just too big of a mountain for Louisville to climb, and TCU did just enough down the stretch to get the W.
Yeah, I mean, it was. And I liked the way they officiated the first half. It was great. It was up and down basketball. It was frenetic.
I couldn't even tweet hardly or post on Horned Frog Blitz because it was going so fast.
It was so fast. It was ugly early, but it was fast and it was fun. But yeah, it is really hard to make that adjustment as a player. But I think the whistles did allow Louisville to get back in the game to a degree too. So it was kind of a cost and benefit there. I want to say one other thing about Donovan Hunter. I asked Mark Campbell after the game because he got asked a great question by our friend Nick Giaramonti, who asked him about balancing getting ready for a Sweet 16 game and also like the portal opens tomorrow, which is insane because college basketball is stupid. But and my follow-up question to him was like, having Donovan play the way that she played has got to be a pretty good recruiting tool for you if you've got the next Haley Van Lith, looking at TCU in the portal, because she comes back. Well, we never know. In college basketball, we assume she comes back. We assume Taylor Bigby comes back. You have some nice pieces returning, despite the fact that you lose so much talent on this team. And so, Donovan, if TCU's play style alone isn't enough to draw a kid to TCU, saying I get to play with that girl and Maddie Shear and like some of these that's a pretty compelling offer, I think, for a star guard to come out and look at TCU. And it's not just that. Like this team, Haley broke down on the podium again tonight, which is something that we've seen her do authentically a couple of times this season. Mark Campbell doesn't just say family, and he doesn't just say this program is a family and he's going to protect it. Like, he truly lives it out with these players every single day. We've heard him talk about how he's going to protect this program as he recruits, and it's so important for him not just sign the best players but the right players. That he is invested not just in this team being successful, which he's shown that he can do, but in building it the right way and bringing the right kind of players. And again, when you see the unselfishness, like Taylor Bigby was a starter a month and a half ago and plays 4 minutes tonight, and you would never know by the way that she carries herself on the bench. You know, Una Jovanovic comes here, has a massive role a season ago, and goes stretches without playing. Deja Merrill, is a hero up in Ames against Iowa State, and then has only played a handful of games since. This team understands that their role is to make sure the program is successful, and because of the example that's set by Mark and this coaching staff and these best, like Haley scored 4 points in the first half Friday, and it was fine. Like, it wasn't a big deal. Like, she was struggling to score in the first half tonight, and it was fine. She made the play. She makes winning plays. This team plays winning basketball because they play for each other and for the program and for the jersey as much as they play for themselves.
It's really refreshing to see. And it's not something that you always see, especially when a team is entirely made up of transfers. Yeah. But it's a nice brand of basketball that TCU plays, and TCU fans get to see it through 2030. Because you talked about signing players out of the transfer portal. Well, Mike Buddy did the most important thing as far as the transfer portal is concerned by signing Mark Campbell to an extension. Earlier or late last week, an extension that goes through 2030, keeps Mark Campbell here for the next 5 seasons. An incredible hire by Jeremiah Donati.
Yeah.
His fingerprints are all over the hire, and an incredible extension, I think, from Mike Buddy to keep Mark Campbell here, because he joked the other day, we had a little bit of a lunch with Buddy, a couple media folks did, and he joked that nobody has come calling for Mark Campbell yet, but he knows that they will, and if nobody does, then everyone else is stupid. Because not his exact words, in case. Yeah. But that was the gist, as people would be really dumb not to come calling for Mark Campbell because of how good of a basketball coach is. And the thing that I keep going back to, this is only his 4th year as a head coach.
Yeah. And two of them were at Sac State.
Two of them were at Sac State, where he put Sac State on a similar trajectory to what TCU is on currently now. Most program wins in a single season in history there. They broke a ton of program records in the 2 years he was at Sac State. Fortunately, he's going to be at TCU a little bit longer. And he talked earlier this week, too, about what that does for him as far as going to the portal, going into these high schools and recruiting the next generation of players is, hey, you don't have to worry, I'm going to be here. And the contract extension that I just signed shows that. And I think that was a huge first step to ensuring that the program doesn't plateau or take a step back or do any of those things, is to make sure that the guy who built the thing stays for a little bit longer. And then saw this comment that I want to call out from Zoom Play over on YouTube that I think is pretty appropriate. Haley Van Lith is the female version of Max Duggan.
Sure.
A little bit more national prominence for HVL. She's got like a LaCroix sponsorship deal.
Gatorade,
Pizza Hut. She played in the Olympics, all these other kinds of things. But as far as, I think what Zoom is saying here, like grittiness, toughness, doing what it takes to win. Haley Van Lith definitely has a little Max Duggan, gives us some Max Duggan vibes when she's playing on the court.
Just a little bit. Is it the national narrative around Haley Van Lith is very confusing. And it's not because people are terrible, but she has taken that meme of her. We're going to start seeing it pop up again, of her shrugging her shoulders as Caitlin Clark hits a 75-foot 3-pointer behind her, and a lot of people saying that she took the easy way out by leaving Louisville. She was ring chasing, and then she took the easy way out by leaving the SEC to come to the Big 12 and play. And we've talked about this with football players and other basketball players, but at the end of the day, these are young people. And she talked, I had a chance to talk to her one-on-one in the locker room, which is not something that I've really gotten an opportunity to do this season. And, when she broke down on the podium a little bit, she talked about being pulled out of the darkness. And so I just kind of asked her what that meant to her and said, like, don't be specific if you don't want to. I don't want you to be, I don't want you to go anything you're not comfortable with. But she was very open about how difficult it has been for her to be in the spotlight since she was a high school kid. And how the social media influence, she was very open about some mental health struggles that she's had, about some, she flat out said there were times I didn't want to be alive because of the pressure and just how difficult it is to be a young person that is being that exposed from such a young age, and to be a national recruit and somebody who was playing on the pre-Olympic teams. It was incredibly, I was really awed by her vulnerability in that moment and her willingness to share it. But she said that she feels that this was her season to use her platform to talk about everything that she's been through, and how her faith has really carried that through. And we've heard this team talk a lot about faith, including their Bible parties that they mentioned yesterday or Friday, whatever that was.
Saturday, yeah.
They're so funny. But she, I think a lot of people just think, oh, well, she had a bad season at LSU. And when she talks about, having her joy back, but it's so much more than that. And Mark Campbell, the staff, and these teammates have really enabled her to play with a freedom and a joy that, she still sees the comments. She still knows what people say, but she has her confidence in herself back. And she feels that Mark Campbell is she said that Mark Campbell is the first coach that she's ever fully trusted. And that part of that was her fault, because of just not, like, vulnerability is terrifying, especially when you're an athlete, and it's easy to feel like you're being used for something. But that her and Campbell, she said they butted heads and they went at it. They were fighting for a bit, and she finally realized that he just wants to love me for who I am and accept me for who I am. And that was the moment where everything changed for her. And it's really cool to know that we have a coach. It's a hell of a coach, a great basketball coach, a great recruiter, elite in both those areas. But at the end of the day, cares so much more about his players as people than he ever would care about what they do for him on the court. And that in itself is incredibly rare in college athletics now.
Makes it even better that he's signed on to be a Horned Frog for at least the next 5 years, and hopefully long beyond that. Melissa, that leads us to the next step in this journey for TCU women's basketball.
Let's not ignore Collins. Who's this guy? I don't know who this Colin Post guy is. I saw the comment. I mean, I feel like it's important.
I can't read it.
Oh, you can't see it? Okay.
It's like it's too far down on my list.
Oh, yeah. You're getting older. It's fine. It's rough.
Hang on. What does this say? Colin Post. Many people are saying Melissa is the greatest among TCU sport media folk. Yeah. Is this true? Colin, the noted Frogs Insider intern,
yes,
has forgotten who signs his paychecks, and it's not Melissa. No. So I don't know what's going on here. No, yes, obviously, Colin Post, our good friend, CP. Who
I don't know who he is. This is a stranger making a completely unbiased comment. As far
that's
as
true. You don't know him, but he and I used to go get go. We would go get some posties at the pub after men's basketball when he was still on the TCU men's basketball beat. Great man, Colin Post.
Love you, Colin.
Love you, buddy. And the season's not over, right? Like, no. We're waxing and we're waning, and we're talking about how great of a year it has been. But the reality is that the season is not over yet, because TCU heads to Birmingham now. They go to the Sweet 16, and they play a familiar foe in Notre Dame, the 3 seed in this region, who they beat earlier this year in the Cayman Islands by, I believe, 8 after I closed out that tab accidentally. So you go ahead and pull it up, Mel.
Yeah, they scored 30
They used a
in the
huge
fourth
run,
quarter.
Huge run in the fourth quarter. They were down, I believe, like 12 or 13 with 2 minutes left in the third. And then Haley scored 16 points through the end of the game and led TCU back. And they won by 6 or 7, I believe.
76-68 was the final. TCU outscored Notre Dame 31-12 in that decisive fourth quarter to pull the comeback off. Notre Dame was without one of their post players whose name is currently escaping me, which obviously made a big impact. And these are 2 very different teams than they were back in November. But I asked Mark Campbell about the benefit of playing, like having seen this team before. And the thing that he said that I thought was super interesting is he said, like, these are 2 different teams. This is a completely different game. But the thing that we know is that we can beat a Notre Dame, because we've done it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean it is, but at the same time, like you said, these are two totally different teams, and so you're still going to have to go out and play the basketball game. I think the thing that TCU does have confidence in and should have confidence in is they know they can swing things in just one quarter.
Yeah.
Because we saw it in that fourth quarter against Notre Dame back in November, and we saw it against Knight in the second quarter against Louisville. If TCU gets rolling and they kind of boa constrictor you on defense and start knocking down threes, they can beat anybody in the country, and that includes Notre Dame. And so all they have to do is go to Birmingham now and prove that one more time. It's going to be an incredible matchup. We're going to have more content on the show about it as we kind of get into the week. But Melissa, I'm very much looking forward to seeing this team play in a Sweet 16. I just think that's really dope.
It's super dope. And the fact that you and I now both have to work our way to Birmingham next weekend. So otherwise you're going to get beat up apparently.
Yeah. Mark Campbell's told me I needed to be there. So I'm
Yeah.
going to do my best to be there.
Yeah, we're going to find, and it's a great problem to have. It's going to be tough. Like, things are not going to get easier for this team. Obviously, the farther you advance in March, the harder it is to win. But this team knows they can play with the big dogs. They know they can win games against elite competition. And, like we've been saying all season, I think TCU can truly play with anybody. They are going to have to bring their A game for all 40 minutes. I think they can't. You fell behind big once and overcame it. You don't want to take a risk of having to do it twice against this Notre Dame team that after kind of falling apart at the end of the regular season is playing really, really well over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, Hannah Hydralgo doesn't give you that many opportunities to do that. She's going to step on your neck most of the time. And so you're absolutely right. They need to come out guns firing. They can't get off to a slow start like they did tonight, like they did Friday against Fairleigh Dickinson, because they got off to a slow start against FDU as well in that first quarter. And you can chalk that one up maybe to some rust after not playing for 2 weeks. You can chalk up tonight maybe a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of just slow-footedness, but can't really have it from here on out because you're playing the best of the best. But we're looking forward to TCU women's basketball being the first basketball team, men's or women's, at TCU to make it to this point in the postseason, playing in the Sweet 16 next week against Notre Dame in Birmingham, Alabama. Frog fans, if you are anywhere that you can get to Birmingham, I would encourage you to try and get to this basketball game, because this is a team that is worthy of as much support as TCU can throw behind it. They are doing something literally historic, and we've talked about how historic this team has been all year, but this is another level of historic that TCU women's basketball has now accomplished. So get to Birmingham if you can and support the Horned Frogs in the Sweet 16. Melissa, let's shift a little bit now. 42 minutes on TCU women's basketball and too shabby.
I could do it for another 3 hours.
I know you could, and maybe
we'll give the people a break.
We might have to get back into football form here and do another show later on this week.
I'm working on a fun preview guest. I'm working on it. We'll see if we can make it happen.
Well, you had a great guest before the South Carolina game in Talia Goodman, and
yes,
that game didn't work out, but maybe this one will.
I'm not going to ask her this time.
Okay, yeah, she's a curse. Talia, love you, but you're a curse.
Yeah.
You're a jinx.
I may end up coming back to
longer.
her, but yeah. But otherwise she's
after the season's over, she's going to be an off-season guest. Melissa, let's talk a little FrogballUSA, though, because TCU baseball went to Lubbock, took 2 of 3 from the Red Raiders. A Red Raiders team that isn't great, admittedly, but still a road opponent in the Big 12. You take 2 of 3, that's important. They're now 17-7 on the season, 3-3 in Big 12 play, and just overall a really nice weekend, I think, from the Horned Frogs, who are still trying to scuffle with this pitching rotation a little bit. We saw Tommy Lepore get his second Friday night start. He was great. He gave you his third quality start of the season. He went 6 innings, allowed 2 runs, I believe, and TCU comes away winning that one 13-2. And then on Friday, you have Noah Franco, who gave you a great start against Arizona State, scuffled a little bit in this one, didn't make it out of the second inning, or didn't make it out of the third inning, but then comes back and hits a 3-run home run as TCU ends up losing that game 7-5. And then they come back from down 4-1 on Sunday, extra inning game. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder hits a pair of home runs, one to get the Frogs within 1, and then another to put them ahead in the top of the 11th. An absolute golf shot. And TCU comes away with the series win. It was a nice weekend in Lubbock. It was a gritty weekend in Lubbock. Obviously, there's still a lot for this team in terms of growth that they need to accomplish. But overall, I thought it was a nice step forward for baseball this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is what you hope for at this point when you have a lineup that consists of so many young players and a pitching staff that's without its two, arguably most important pieces. I mean, I cannot say enough things about Sawyer Strohschneider at this point. You tweeted out like what his average has been on this hit streak, but
That was 2 games ago. I've got to
yeah,
update it now.
yeah, you've got to
it's still
update it
going.
now. It's insane. But like you, I will say, were on this kid so freaking early. I mean, you were talking about him in fall ball of just how natural he is, that he was a kid that you couldn't believe didn't have more of an MLB look, that that he, like, as much as we talked about Noah Franco, and rightfully so, and he's been really, really good most of the season, like Sawyer Strohschneider was just the most like ready-made, built in a lab baseball player you could imagine, and he has done nothing but prove that since that like abhorrently slow, difficult start. People were ready to bench this kid, way back in San Diego, and he's shown you what a gift he is. And it's not just what he's doing at the plate; like his power, his awareness, his knowledge of the strike zone are impressive. This kid has a freaking cannon.
Yes.
I mean, an absolute cannon of an arm in right field. And just seeing what a complete baseball player he is, and the mental toughness that he had as a young kid, an 18-year-old kid, to overcome that difficult start and to believe that he belonged. And he's done it in big moment after big moment after big moment.
He was 9 of 16 at the plate this weekend
Jesus.
against Texas Tech. He had 6 RBIs, 5 runs scored, 2 doubles, 2 home runs. And like you said, he's got a laser rocket arm as well. Really good to see him coming through in big moments. Really good to see him coming on strong because, like you said, he struck out, I think, 8 of the first 10 at-bats he had in his collegiate career. And that can really weigh on a kid. We've seen before guys get into slumps like that and just not recover. Yeah. So for him at the ripe old age of 18 to come in, to make the jump from high school to college ball and to bounce like that and to shove like that at the plate after such a hard start is really impressive, not only because of his skill set, but because of his mental toughness.
Yeah.
Because as a former coach, how hard the mental side of sports can be. So really good to see him do that. And I think that, the one question mark that we still have as far as the pitching staff goes is what's the game plan with the bullpen, right? Because when you're shuffling as much as you are with the weekend rotation, it makes it really tough to slot guys in from a bullpen perspective, from a roles perspective, right? Because Kirk likes to have his rotation. Then he likes to have his long relievers, and then he's got his group of guys that he calls like high leverage guys. So you might not have one closer all the time, but you've got 2 or 3, maybe 4 arms that when it's the 7th, 8th, 9th inning, you can go to that guy and give them the baseball and have a lot of confidence. And losing Abel to now losing Parker, we still don't know exactly when the timeline is for him to come back. You've had to shuffle, and I think that more than anything has kind of taken its toll on TCU to this point, and we've seen the results of that as they get later on in weekends, right? If they had lost today, it would have been the 4th time this season that TCU won the Friday game and then lost the next 2. So it's nice that they kind of broke that trend, but you still have some question marks as far as the pitching staff is concerned. It was really nice to see Cade Udy give you what he gave you today. Gianluca Shin came out and gave you a scoreless inning. Louis came in the 11th and shut it down for the Frogs, which was really nice. And I love the way Mason Brassfield has bounced back after that tough start he had against Arizona State. He's given you 2 great performances against DBU and now Texas Tech in relief. Maybe that's just where he's more comfortable right now. And if you've got a guy who's a freshman who is comfortable giving you 3 to 4 innings out of the bullpen, maybe just take it, right? Yeah. But, I think that we're still a couple weeks away maybe from seeing how all of this stuff on the pitching side shakes out, just because you still don't really know when Parker's coming back. Because when Parker comes back, does Tommy stay on Fridays now? Do you slide Parker in on Sundays? Because you're missing 6 innings in a weekend, 7 innings in a weekend, where you could really kind of depend on one guy. And you have to make those up somewhere, and that's where I think the struggle has been for TCU. It hasn't really been with the bats. I mean, we saw them score 13 on Friday and 9 again today, and normally on a good day, 5 or 6 runs will get you a win if you've got the pitching to do it, but that wasn't the case on Saturday. some questionable officiating kind of led to some extra runs for Texas Tech along the way there as well. But at the end of the day, for where this team is, for how many sophomores and freshmen that they're playing, I think 5 were in the starting lineup today. There were 7 in the starting lineup on Friday and Saturday, I believe. Really nice to see where TCU baseball is, with the understanding that guys are going to develop, guys are going to continue to get more consistent. And we're hopefully going to see TCU continue to win weekends like they did this weekend. They got another tough test coming up at Houston next weekend. They got 2 really important midweek games against a good UT Rio Grande Valley baseball team. A lot of opportunities to show what they can do.
I would personally like to see a little more Brody Green in the lineup.
Yeah.
Big Brody Green fan here. I think that I know you probably have to be a little bit careful with him because of his injury history, and maybe you're using him for matchups. But I feel like every time he's played, he has made a very positive impact. I think that moving Kadena down in the order this weekend, or at least today, was a good choice. But I also, and again, I've never played baseball, but how, and you have, so maybe you can speak to this, how much does that constantly shifting batting order impact a player, or is that something that is not that big of a deal?
I think most guys would tell you that it's not that big of a deal, and they may even believe it themselves, but I think baseball players more than most are incredible creatures of habit and creatures of routine, and they like to know what to expect. And I think we saw last year really challenge TCU's players, because I think at one point I checked, and after the first weekend of the season, TCU did not use the same lineup, not only not in back-to-back games, but all season. We had 49 different lineups last year from TCU baseball. And I think that contributed to some of the challenges that we saw. So coming to this year, obviously there's a new guy in charge of the lineup card in Bill Mosiello. And he's another guy who likes to tinker, who likes to tweak and try and find the ideal lineup. But I think he also understands that doing that too much is going to cause harm as well. And so we've seen him give guys a lot of leash this year, like Sawyer Stroh-Snyder with a rough start, and now he's hitting the cover off the ball. We've seen him give a long leash to Jack Bell. And he didn't make the start at third base today. Brody Green did, because of what, like you mentioned, Green has been doing lately. We've seen Isaac Kadena slumping a little bit lately. He only had 1 hit this weekend. Probably still going to be in the lineup on Tuesday and Wednesday, because Mosiello is going to let guys kind of work through some of their challenges. But you have to, at the end of the day, find out the best spot for guys to hit in. I think having Sawyer Stroh-Snyder at the 2 spot is a great spot to have him. Cole Kramer might end up being your leadoff guy, because they still really need a leadoff guy. Yeah. Kadena didn't do a great job in that role. Colton Griffin, a little banged up right now. Didn't see him this weekend. Preston Gamester, I think, could be that guy. He's still banged up from that hit by pitch he took to his wrist against San Diego, so we didn't see him this weekend. I think they're scuffling with a couple injuries right now that I think are keeping them from finding the true ideal lineup, but the reality is that we've also seen some very fun performances from some guys, including, like you mentioned, Stroh-Snyder. Chase Brunson extended his hitting streak to 18 games today with an RBI double in the 11th inning. He's been swinging the bat really, really well. Carson Bowen, in his 1 at-bat today, had a really nice piece of contact. Nolan Traeger has been swinging the bat really, really well. Anthony Silva is having a bounce-back season. Like, it feels to me like the pieces are there. Yeah. And I said this a lot last year. I think that this team right now is more talented than last year's team was. But the pieces are there. You just got to find the right way to fit them all together. And I think that we're still seeing Mosiello work on that. And to be clear, right, people will criticize Sarlos for lineup stuff. And we gotta all get on the same page here. We know that much like with Sonny Dykes and his football team, right, we know who makes the decisions on offense. And we know who makes the decisions on defense. For baseball, we need to know who makes the decisions pitching and who makes the decisions with the lineup card. Kirk Sarlos makes the decisions with the pitching. Bill Mosiello makes the decisions with the lineup card. And that's not to like say, hey, when you're really mad at someone, this is who you should be mad at.
This is who you
should
attack.
But this is just, that's the reality. That's the strategy. And Sarlos does it that way, A, because he's a hell of a pitching coach, B, because he fully trusts Bill Mosiello, And Mosiello has a pretty damn good track record of putting good lineups and put good batting lineups out there. So I think what we're seeing is Bill Mosiello still trying to find that perfect lineup card. We're honing in on it though, right? Like we've seen Chase Brunson hitting in the 5 spot for the last couple weekends. We've seen Franco in that DH 4 hole for the last couple weekends. So like we're getting closer. He's really comfortable with Silva down in that bottom third because he provides some really good pop down there.
Yeah.
Still got to find a leadoff guy, find a guy to consistently turn the lineup over. But we're starting to see that lineup card take shape. I think in another week or two, we'll see him hone in on it even more.
Yeah, and I do think it will be important to get that consistency, but it is. I mean, we're into Big 12 play now, so it starts to feel like it's getting late early. But you don't have to. We've talked about this a million times, and we've seen this a million times. You don't have to be playing your best baseball in March. You have to be You have to be getting better. But if they can find a lineup that works, rotation that works, some consistency with how they're using the bullpen arms, and they can keep those freshmen growing up, this team absolutely has the talent, like you mentioned, has the pieces to be a postseason team for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
They just need to keep moving forward, and I don't think you can overstate how important going into Lubbock and getting a series win like this was, especially to have played from behind a lot of today and needing a lot of different pitchers to step up. Cade Udy just was outstanding in that. And we saw we saw Braden Sloan come in and keep TCU in it Saturday too. So
yeah,
that was interesting.
Thank you for bringing that up because a lot of people were a little riled up about that. He
Yeah.
came in when TCU was losing 6-5, which is not a situation we've seen him used in yet this season. And had TCU lost today, I think a lot of folks would have been really questioning that call. There are still a few out there doing that. And I can understand asking the question 100%. If I'm playing Kirk Saarloos for a minute, Braden Sloan got up and started warming up when it was still a 5-5 baseball game on Saturday. Yeah. And so in that moment, you're thinking, who can I go get currently in the 5th inning of this baseball game to keep it tied or keep it a 1-run baseball game and allow my bats, which have put up 18 runs in the first 14 innings of this series, an opportunity to go and get the win. And Braden Sloan is that guy right now, right? And so you didn't use him on Friday. You had the opportunity to get a big win without using your best bullpen arm on Friday. And now you have the luxury of saying, I can go get this series right now. If Braden Sloan comes in, holds the game where it is and allows the bats to take over. So logically, that makes sense to me as well. I can understand people's hesitancy to use your best arm in that situation, but I also get it from Saarloos' perspective of saying the bats have been hot. Let's see if they stay hot. Didn't work out. Everybody would have loved for it to work out. 1 check swing, strike 3 goes the other way, and it probably does work out. But not the case on Saturday. And then you came back, you gritted out an extra inning win today. So everybody's kind of forgiving in that moment. But I wouldn't expect to see Braden Sloan in too many more of those situations, especially if a couple other guys get healthy, specifically Cademan Parker. But I on the surface, I can see why people question the decision.
Sure.
For me, it is what it is. I think it's a fine call.
Yeah, you have to try to win every game. Mm-hmm. Right, like at the end of the day, and like you said, it wasn't like it was an untenable situation. TCU still had a chance.
Yeah, it's not like they were down 8 or 9.
Yeah, in that ballpark, I mean, we saw you can put up 5 runs in a hurry.
Yep.
And you can hit a lot of home runs. The game can change on a swing and a bat. Like we talked about TCU basketball being able to shift things in a quarter. This baseball team, absolutely, especially in the right part of the lineup, can shift an entire game in an inning. We've seen them do it multiple times this season. So I think the biggest thing right now is just consistency. Right? It's consistency of the lineup. It's consistency for your players. And when you have a team that is predominantly made up of freshmen and sophomores and a lot of first-time at TCU players, consistency is going to take a while to build.
This is a different kind of inconsistency than we see with other programs at TCU, right? Like we saw some on a very different scale, saw a few inconsistencies from women's basketball this year as those veteran players were trying to get to know each other.
Yeah.
We're going to see some inconsistency as these young guys get to know each other too. And at the end of the day, with baseball, just like any other sport, talent tends to bear out. And I stand by the fact that I think TCU has the most talented roster in the Big 12, if not top three, right?
I don't think you're wrong.
So, I think at the end of the day, there's still 8 weekends left of Big 12 baseball. TCU's sitting there at 3-3 right now. And I think we're going to see this team consistently start to get better and play more consistently the further down the road we get. Melissa, we have at the hour mark of this live show 706 people watching.
Holy cow, folks.
Yeah.
That's
So,
incredible. Thank you,
a
guys.
toast to that. You toast your Blantons, I'll toast my Mellick, and thank you all for hanging out with us on a Sunday night. I was gonna wrap, and then I saw 706, and I'm like,
Do we need to talk about men's basketball a little bit? Yeah, I was afraid of that.
we can. Yeah, let's do it.
let's talk a little bit about what's going on. So TCU declines postseason opportunities. Probably the right decision. Just from they got a lot of work to do. They've got a lot of roster building to do, right? They graduate some people. There's plenty of scuttlebutt and social media about guys entering the portal. I don't know how much of that we're able to talk about at this point. I know the board knows, and I know some of it's public and some of it isn't. But this team has some work to do, and I think it's the right decision to get to work.
Yes. 2 things that I know for sure. There's nobody on this planet that was more frustrated and less satisfied with this men's basketball season than Jamie Dixon. And the second thing that I know is they are going to attack the transfer portal hard this offseason. I think that there is a desire to not only get back to the tournament, but make a deep run. That is something that Jamie Dixon has not been able to do in his coaching career, not just at TCU, but also at Pitt. He struggled to get past the second round of the tournament, and he thinks that he's capable of doing it. And this offseason is going to be critical for him to be able to prove that to be true. So there's one player already in the portal, Vashawn Alette. It's already been reported he will not be back with TCU next season. That's tough, right? Because he was your leading scorer for the majority of the year. He also was your second lowest efficient shooter this year, and he shot the most shots of any player. And so it's going to be tough when one of your least efficient players is your biggest volume shooter to find some kind of consistency on offense. So I think what TCU is trying to do this offseason is a couple of different things. First, they're trying to keep their young core together. I've been told it's a priority to keep David Punch, Micah Robinson, and Malik Diallo around, and rightfully so, because I think of the players that we saw play big minutes for TCU this year, those 3 were 3 of the most consistent, even if their minutes weren't most consistent. They're going to try and find a veteran point guard. I don't know what the guard situation is going to look like for TCU next year. I know that at least one guard is already in the portal in Alette. There might be another one hitting the portal soon. Going to let that kid have that moment. Not going to spoil it for him here. TCU's already been in contact with Iowa point guard. Can't remember his name.
At least one guy on the board super happy about it.
Yeah, one guy. Let's see if I can just Google it.
This is great. This is great, Peter. Great radio for our 711 of y'all.
I'm doing great. Brock Harding. TCU's already been to see Brock Harding. They're working on getting him down for an official visit here in the next couple weeks. So that's a guy that they are working on trying to get to TCU. He was a sophomore at Iowa State this year, at Iowa this year, pardon me. Averaged 8.8 points and 5.3 assists per game. So that can be one of your older veteran point guard ball handler presences. They're going to look for more wings because they need more wings. They're going to look for another big man because they still want some more depth in the front court as well. And they still don't know, if you know who they're targeting in the portal, that can give you a good idea of who they maybe aren't expecting to be on the team next year. And so the fact that they are looking for guys at all kind of 3 spots tells you that they were not satisfied with how things turned out this year, and that they're looking to renovate and rebuild that roster a little bit to make another run at things in 2025, 26. It's a hard situation to be in, I think. But I think also when you talk about rev share maybe lending some more parity and balance, across the conference, where you don't have one team spending $9-10 million on basketball NIL and one team spending $2 million. There's probably going to be some opportunity for TCU to climb up those standings a little bit next season. But it's like you talked about with baseball and women's basketball. You got to get guys in here to buy into a culture. You've got to get guys in here to buy into a system of play, especially defensively, which we didn't see from everybody at times this season. And you go from there. But it starts this offseason. It starts on Monday with the portal opening on Monday, the 24th, to go and get guys who are going to come and buy in and help TCU get somewhere that the women have now been, but TCU men still have not.
Yeah, like you said, you do not want to be rebuilding your roster from scratch every year, but also that's the reality of what college basketball is now. And you might as well just dig in and get used to it. But I think, like you said, the priority needs to be keeping that young core together. And if you can keep Punch and Micah, and I'd love to keep Malik and Jace Posey, I mean, there are some guys that you can absolutely build around and that can be really, really good next year. And you know, they bring in a solid class. And they bring in a superstar freshman who hopefully will be ready to play as a true freshman, like we saw some of these guys do this year. So it's an unenviable position, especially because you know that the pressure is only going to be ramped up higher on Jamie and that program, and not like, I think a lot of people want to compare what Mark Campbell's done and what they think Jamie Dixon should be doing, and it really is truly apples and oranges in so many levels. But TCU fans have tasted Sweet 16 success now, and I think they're going to want more of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bug Edwards. Obviously, that's a great sign. It's the second highest rated recruit in program history, according to our metrics over at 24/7. Bug Edwards, Duncanville guard. He's a combo guard. Led Duncanville to the 6A Division I state title this year. He won MVP in that game. He scored 23 points and 6 rebounds in that title-winning game. But he's not the only signee, right? TCU also has Xavier Edmonds, a junior college kid, signed and coming in next year. He's 6'9", 245 pounds from Salt Lake City Community College. He's averaging 19 and 8 there this year. He had a 37.14 rebound double-double against Snow College. He's a big body. He's a banger. He loves to rebound. That's the kind of guy that you really need. And you can see where Dixon is starting to address some of these issues with just those two guys, because you didn't have consistent three-point shooting this year. Bug Edwards can score at all three levels. He's a great shooter. He's a lefty. You needed someone to help bang on the glass a little bit this year, desperately. TCU is one of the worst rebounding teams in the league this year. You got a guy coming in who averages almost 10 rebounds a game out of junior college. So he's got a little bit of experience. He's a little bit older. Obviously playing at the JUCO level, isn't playing in the Big 12, but you hope he can come in and give you most of what he gave Salt Lake Community College this year. So that's a really good starting point. If you can keep some of these young guys around, get those two guys that are already signed into the program as well. And then you're talking about maybe 3 to 5 portal guys based on who you lose to come in and really kind of shore things up. I think that there's a great opportunity for TCU here. You know, I think that the institution has shown a willingness to buy in at the biggest level, at the highest level. And so it's not going to be for lack of support. It's not going to be for lack of anything, really, when it comes to TCU men's basketball getting back to where we've seen them the last couple of seasons. So I personally am hopeful that this offseason is going to be really successful and that will lead to success next year. I understand why other folks maybe take a little bit more of a pessimistic view. But for me, I think that there's a great opportunity here for TCU to rebound, both literally and figuratively, and have a really good season next year.
Yeah, and I think that you've got to hang with them. Right, you got to hang with them at this point, and just kind of let things play out, because there's going to be a lot of moving pieces here over the next several weeks. But we have seen that they can draw in talented players out of the portal. There will be options.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to close some of these big names, but it's not like they've been bereft of portal talent. It's not like they aren't willing to step up and spend money.
Right.
It's just you can't swing and miss too often in college basketball these days. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do when you have a lot of guys moving up levels. Like, you don't get a lot of P4 to P4 transfers come into TCU that have a ton of playing experience. A lot of times you're taking chances on guys that want to level up.
Yeah, you are. And we've seen TCU have success in that regard. We've seen TCU miss in that regard, just like we've seen schools across the country swing and hit and swing and miss, right? Like JT Toppin coming out of New Mexico last year, everybody wanted him.
Yeah.
Nobody knew how he was going to perform at this level. Turns out he was just going to be the Big 12 Player of the Year this year, right? He's going to give you everything and more. But sometimes you swing and miss. And you live and you learn. You learn to maybe fine-tune your evaluations a little bit more. You fine-tune how you recruit and who you recruit a little bit more, and you go from there. So we'll see. We'll see, right? Like just like we'll see with Mark Campbell this offseason. He's got a hell of a job trying to find someone to replace Haley Van Lith, Sedona Prince, and Madison Connor, and Agnes Eminopu, just out of those four, right? Yeah. 4/5 of your starting lineup. We'll see what he can do in the offseason as well. And hopefully both basketball coaches have success portaling guys, getting good high schoolers in here, and building these programs up for years to come.
Yeah, it's hard not to believe that he is going to continue to have success because, like you said, he's got a pretty easy sales pitch at this point.
Truly.
The style that they play, like he said today, is they believe they'll have 3 players drafted. I don't know if we'll see 3 players drafted, but it's certainly possible. But he's gonna show that he can take players and completely revitalize their career, both on and off the court, and that's a damn good sales pitch in women's basketball right now.
If the WNBA is serious about being entertaining, all 3 of those players will be drafted. Madison Connor's going to need to do some more shuffle work. Defensively, but hey, she's a damn sniper. She's a damn sniper, and she will knock a 3 down in your face and then tell you all about it as you run back down the court. And that is why she is probably my favorite athlete I've ever encountered at TCU. She's just an absolute killer.
For shit talking,
I was so excited today, specifically to sit there courtside at the media table down on the sideline. One, because that meant that I wasn't right next to the drummers in TCU's band like I was on Friday, but also because I was very excited to see if I would catch a little glimpse of Madison just talking her talk and walking her walk. Didn't quite get it, but I did see a lot of big happy faces, a lot of grit, a lot of screaming over the crowd of almost 7,500 people who were there at Schulmeyer today.
I love this damn team, man.
Pretty
I'm gonna
fun.
Miss them.
Pretty cool.
Miss them so
hey, we
much.
don't have to miss them quite yet because they're playing again next weekend.
That's true. Not done yet, right?
Not done yet. I think we are, though, because we've kind of vamped for the last minute or two. And despite the fact that there are now 768 of you
love you
in
guys.
here,
I'm
y'all
so
are
old,
freaking
though.
incredible. Very thankful for everybody that tuned in on Twitter or on YouTube. Make sure you go over to the YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. If all of the people that are watching this right now just pulled up YouTube, went to Frogs Insider, and hit that subscribe button, I think we'd get over 2,000. That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be really cool.
Just throwing that out there. But whether you're watching live on Twitter or YouTube, whether you're listening to this wherever you get your podcasts in a day or two, just know that we're really appreciative of each and every one of you for taking time, for tuning in, for continuing to support the show. We don't do this for a decade unless you guys are along for the journey. Yeah. So we're super thankful. And with that, at 10:16 on a Sunday night, I think we're going to call it.
Oh, I have to go back to work tomorrow. Spring break is over.
Spring break is a thing of the past. Now you've only got, 9 weeks till summer?
Oh, let's go.
Let's go. You can do it. Grind it out for women's basketball. For Melissa Treebwasser, I'm Jamie Plunkett. We will talk to you probably later this week as we preview TCU's matchup with Notre Dame in the Sweet 16. But until then, go Frogs.
Go Frogs.